So the question is, which National Football League teams have the best offense heading into the 2023 season? I've got one major surprise for you that I have to say I found hard to believe, but when I really sat down and thought about it, I was like, I'm actually going to put a team from Louisiana in the top 5 offenses ending the 2023 football season. I've got that plus a whole lot more coming up on the House of Takes today. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet to The Big Show, please go ahead and subscribe. And of course, like this video. All right, on to the content we go. Now, if you haven't heard, a couple days ago, Jimmy Graham had an episode at a Southern California resort. It turns out he ended up having a seizure, which of course is going to set his comeback back. No word yet on exactly what that's going to mean for his particular comeback. He actually got arrested. And I had, spent a lot of time over the last week sort of like looking at all of the offenses in the National Football League. And I was going to go ahead and pull back on my New Orleans Saints prediction that they were going to have one of the top 5 offenses in the NFL when this went down with Jimmy Graham a couple days ago. That being said, I'm still going to keep New Orleans in the top 5 offenses heading into 2023. Now, if we take a look back at the top offenses last season, of course, it was the Kansas City Chiefs. We know what Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles did. The Detroit Lions had a excellent season, would be in that top 5 ranking. And I'm pulling these out of StatMuse, just so you know, because there's all sorts of different rankings for offenses around the country. And I decided to just be consistent and use StatMuse for this. In at number 4 is the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers, of course, round out the top 5. Now, the 5 below that are the Dolphins, Vikings, Chargers, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Dallas Cowboys. In at 11, believe it or not, which ties into my New Orleans Saints prediction, is Derek Carr's former team, the Las Vegas Raiders. So, a lot going on. We are just 3 weeks away from the start of your National Football League season. And I don't know about you, but I am, super fired up for the start of the season. So, into the top 5 we go. Now, I'm a little bit concerned that the Kansas City Chiefs don't have a number 2 wide receiver, let alone a number 1 wide receiver on their team. That is until you take a look at the new mustache that Travis Kelce is sporting these days. Travis Kelce is clearly the number 1 wide receiver on that Kansas City Chiefs team. Still, they have a wide variety of players in the wide receiver room that, quite frankly, you've never heard of. When Sky Moore is the name that you recognize the most, and he's only in his second year in the National Football League, there are potentially going to be some issues. Now, Patrick Mahomes, we know, is a hell of a quarterback and will find a way to get it done. I mean, for all those years that Tom Brady didn't have Randy Moss there were a bunch of players who were wide receivers on those Bill Belichick New England Patriots coach teams that you would have never seen on any other roster. Look, Andy Reid, Bill Belichick know that when you have a superstar quarterback, you can get away with not spending Tyreek Hill style money on wide receivers. Now, Patrick Mahomes, clearly in the middle of the greatness of his career. He is got several more years before he probably even peaks and begins to slide down the backside of career mountain. We know that it took Tom Brady an awful long. It took Tom Brady till his last year in the league before that even happened. Still, the Patriots, as the Kansas City Chiefs, with their two great quarterbacks, are able to spend more money in other places. Remember, you can't go Golden State Warriors in the National Football League and overspend to that extent. If you remember, there was one year where the Golden State Warriors actually had a tax bill from the National Basketball Association. Was close to $500 million, which is what they ended up having to pay in a luxury tax. You can't do that in the National Football League. So decisions have to be made. Now, that's not to say that the Kansas City Chiefs don't have a great young wide receiver that we just haven't heard of yet. And if I know Andy Reid, they probably have a really nice, great young wide receiver that would probably turn into a number two for the Kansas City Chiefs in the future. In at number two, so I'm keeping Kansas City at one. In at number two, I am going to put the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals were not in the top 10 offenses in the National Football League last season, at least according to StatMuse. You have to remember that there was a major injury to one Joe Burrow pretty early in the season. The Cincinnati Bengals started off the season extremely slow last year before they caught fire. I think they're going to catch fire at the beginning of the season. I think there's no way that Burrow doesn't start come week one. I think the calf injury is minor. I think Joe Burrow is going to get his big bag of cash here shortly as well. I look for the Kansas City Chiefs, who have all of the weapons in the world, and they were able to get Joe Mixon back at a very steep discount, which is going to make an absolutely huge difference for the Cincinnati Bengals. So Bengals in at number two. In at number three should be the San Francisco 49ers. Look, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. I watched the one series that he was in on Saturday night. I'm based here in the Silicon Valley, for those of you that didn't know. Huge Minnesota Viking fan, based in the Silicon Valley. And I've had to deal with 49er fans for the past 20 years. And leave it to the 49ers to draft a great quarterback with the last pick in the National Football League draft. Brock Purdy just has it. It is amazing to watch him play. Now, I'm sure he'll have some interception issues throughout the upcoming season, and you'll have to be cautious about injuries because I'm not sure if he's really set up to be the kind of quarterback that can take a 17-game punishing National Football League season. So Kyle Shanahan is going to have to be smarter with Brock Purdy than he was with Trey Lance last season. Though I think he knew what he had with Trey Lance, and the only way Trey Lance was going to succeed in the San Francisco 49ers offense was to run him more than allow him to drop back and overshoot a tight end going across the middle by 10 yards, because that is who Trey Lance is, at least at this point. He's still young. You never know. That being said, Brock Purdy is the real deal. They have Deebo Samuel. they have Kittle. They have the best running back in the National Football League in the backfield. Look, in one Christian McCaffrey. That's not to mention Jennings and all of the other nice little pieces that they have. In fact, they're players that are going to be cut by the San Francisco 49ers at both the tight end and wide out position will be picked up by other teams almost immediately. They are rich with talent. Plus, they have one of the best defenses in the National Football League as well. San Francisco in at number three. In at number four is very interesting. Now, we saw what happened with the Detroit Lions last season, and Jared Goff had a fantastic season. And everybody and their brother is picking the Detroit Lions to actually dethrone the Minnesota Vikings and win that NFC North division. Whether or not I agree with that is not the point I'm going to make here. The point I'm going to make is, do you really believe that Jared Goff is going to have two fantastic seasons in a row the way he did last year? Look, Jared Goff actually statistically had a better season than Kirk Cousins. He threw half of the interceptions that Kirk Cousins threw last season. So everything on paper points to the Detroit Lions being the fourth best offense in the National Football League in the upcoming season. Other contenders would be the Los Angeles Chargers, my Minnesota Vikings, the Tua-led Miami Dolphins, who had absolutely put into the top five if I could get some sort of assurance that Tua wasn't going to get hurt multiple times during the first 5 weeks of the season. Not wishing injury on Tua at all, but that, my friends, is a reality of the Miami Dolphins situation this particular year. Then you have the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy gets to call the plays. And then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I don't believe are going to step forward. I think they're going to hover. I'm not entirely sure that Trevor Lawrence is going to be as good as everybody thinks he's going to be based on the games that we saw at the end of the season. Then you've got Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And then you have Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. Look, if Justin Fields could stay healthy for the entire season, they've brought in enough weapons for Justin Fields to actually do a lot of damage and actually do something with that Chicago Bears offense. Actually get it into the top 10 in the National Football League. That being said, I'm not going to pick Detroit. I'm not going to pick any of those particular teams, but I am going to go back to the well with the Buffalo Bills. I think the Buffalo Bills this season are going to have a bit of a resurgence. I think that their quarterback, Josh Allen, who's taken a tremendous amount of heat, and he's by far one of my favorite quarterbacks in the National Football League to watch. I've got him in the top three. You've got Mahomes, you've got Josh Allen, and you've got Lamar Jackson. Like, if I had to sit down and watch a quarterback for an entire season, I'd want to watch one of those three quarterbacks play. Josh Allen has a ton of weapons still on this team. The hope is, and this is what I said last year when it came to the Buffalo Bills, the hope is that they can actually figure out their running game. So Buffalo in at number 4. And in at number 5, and sorry, Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets fans, Dalvin Cook, deserter of the Minnesota Vikings, refusing to redo his contract in any real friendly way like Joe Mixon did, ends up with the, and I'm not bitter, ends up with the New York Football Jets. Look, the Jets have a ton of talent across the board. I'm just not sold on that offensive line right now. And it has been quite some time, hasn't it, Aaron, since you've actually thrown for over 300 yards in a game. Though it wouldn't surprise me if the New York Football Jets were in the top 10 offenses next season or this upcoming season. I just don't see them breaking into the top 5, primarily because of the style of football they're going to have to play with that offensive line. That being said, in at number 5, I, of course, teased it at the beginning of this episode of House of Takes, which is a Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints. Now, when you look at this New Orleans Saints roster, and I know Alvin Kamara is going to be out for a little while, but you got Michael Thomas, who actually appears to want to play in New Orleans yet again. Then you have Taysom Hill, who can do all sorts of different little things for you. But what I'm most excited about was what I was most excited about last season, which was Chris Olave. And now Chris Olave actually has a guy that is going to be able to get him the ball on a consistent basis. Look, the knock on Derek Carr is he's not great at improvising. That is not who Derek Carr is as a quarterback. Derek Carr is a controlled quarterback. So if you put the play in and you expect the players to run their routes, Derek Carr has the skills to actually get that done. He can throw the deep ball. He can throw the mid-range ball. He can throw the screen passes as well as anybody in the National Football League. I absolutely love this New Orleans Saints football team. They are going to be the surprise of the National Football League this particular year. They've got a solid defense coming back. Derek Carr has a lot of weapons, and they have some really nice young running backs you haven't heard of yet. I'm telling you, the New Orleans Saints are going to break into the top 5 football offenses in the National Football League in the year 2023. All right. That is it for this episode of the House of Takes. Hey, we've been away for a couple weeks, a little time off, a little home vacation, just getting fired up and retooled for the upcoming National Football League season. Cannot wait for it. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet to the House of Takes channel on YouTube or the House of Takes pod, which is available everywhere, please go ahead and do so. Much appreciated. And of course, like this video if you're seeing the actual video. For the House of Takes pod, I am Dave Dubois, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.